Welcome to the Invested Dads Podcast, simplifying financial topics so that you can take action and make your financial situation better. Helping you to understand the current world of financial planning and investments, here are your hosts, Josh Robb and Austin Wilson.
All right. Hey. Welcome back to the Invested Dads Podcast, a podcast where we take you on a journey to better your financial future. Today, we are going to be talking about a three-letter acronym, and as we know, the finance industry is full of acronyms.
Love acronyms.
We are talking about the three-letter acronym HSA. So we're talking about HSA accounts.
Yes, HSA, which we all know stands for Hippos Swimming Aggressively, I think. Or was it Hug Someone's Arm?
Don't hug my arm.
No.
Please, just don't.
Hippos. They kill more people than crocodiles do.
They do. And speaking of hippos,
Yes.
one of the zoos, I saw it. It was official Bloomberg Twitter.
Oh, it made it on Bloomberg.
Well, Bloomberg, they compile a bunch of Twitter accounts and put them in a feed. And apparently this zoo in Germany or something painted a hippo's nose with non-toxic, they made sure to point out non-toxic paint.
Yeah.
But they painted a hippo's nose with non-toxic paint and let the hippo paint on some surface of some sort with their nose.
And it was pretty good. Then they sell it.
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea what they did, but someone was really bored.
Yes. There's that gorilla that did that.
Was it a guy-rilla or a girl-rilla?
Gorilla.
Girl-rilla? Girl-rilla?
But it was, they made a movie out of it and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
You watch too much TV. I don't know what you're
It was
talking
like a Disney thing. It was a book first, and then it was a movie.
about. The gorilla who painted?
Yes. I forget what it's called.
Man, we're getting short on ideas.
We're way off. All right. So,
HSAs.
HSA. What is that really?
Well, okay, yeah. So, first of all, it does not stand for any of the things you said.
Okay.
Let's just get that very clear real quick. It stands for health, as in your health.
Yep.
Savings, as in not spending, but we'll get there. Account. Health savings account.
Health savings account.
So, that's where we're at.
Yes.
What is it, Josh? Tell me what an HSA is.
Yeah. So, there are different types of savings vehicles for your health care. There's FHAs or all
FSA, flexible
FSA,
savings
flexible.
account.
And we're not going to get into too many details about all the differences. We're focused on this one. And the main reason is most people, this is the account that you're going to be qualified for.
Because most people have nowadays high deductible health plans.
Yes.
That has not always been the case.
No. And so that's the first requirement for a health savings account is it is a medical savings account designed to help you pay for your medical costs. In order to qualify to have a health savings account, you must be enrolled in a high deductible healthcare plan.
Yes.
Now, the IRS gives guidelines to that. They have a minimum amount of deductible that has to be in your plan to qualify for high deductible.
Right.
And it's different for individuals and families because families, more people, they have a higher deductible. If you have that requirement, then you can use this health savings account. So we're going to talk about that. One of the main reasons why a health savings account is appealing is it's what's called triple tax advantaged.
Okay, I like the idea of 3X.
Yes,
triple.
I mean, that's better than double for sure.
It's at least one better than double.
So triple tax advantage means that when you put money in, contributions are tax-free. In fact, you get a deduction.
Yeah, we should clarify that, though, because there's two ways that HSAs can work.
Yes.
And I've had both in my working career.
Yes.
Number one, you can have pre-tax. If you have the HSA actually offered through your employer, you can use it as a pre-tax deduction to lower your taxable income. So you're essentially getting, it's the same thing as getting a tax deduction, but you're doing it before you pay taxes on it. Number two, it can be you pay for it with post-tax dollars. So if it's not a payroll deduction, you can pay for it with post-tax dollars, and then you get a tax deduction at the end of the year when you do your taxes.
Yep. So
but you can't do both.
No. But either way, it is a tax-free contribution into there.
Yes.
Because you either get your tax backs or you just don't have any tax counted income.
I guess it's probably more beneficial from a tax perspective to get it pre-tax, to take it out pre-tax, because if you're filing the standard deduction anyway...
Well, I think it's on a Schedule 1. But I'm not positive on that.
Okay.
So I think either way you can get the deduction on
Got it.
But, so that's the contributions going in. You're not paying any tax on them.
Love it.
The growth along the way, because we're talking about this in a little bit, but you can invest the investments in there, even if you just get interest. Anything growth-wise
Dividends,
in the HSA, that's all tax-free. If you then take money out for qualified expenses, which are medical expenses, we'll get a little detail. There's a lot of nuances to that. We're not going to spend a time with an exhaustive list. But in general, if it's a qualified medical expense, there's no tax owed on the distribution.
Yes.
Meaning the whole time that money moves in and around and out, no
Tax free. Yeah.
Triple tax.
That's great.
So I mentioned you need a high deductible plan. There's also a couple other qualifications for you that you have to meet in order to have this HSA. So high deductible is the first one. You have to have no other healthcare coverage. And you say, well, why would I have two healthcare plans? They're already expensive.
Right.
The biggest one people run into this is Medicare.
Yeah.
So once I'm at Medicare age 65 and I'm on Medicare, I can no longer contribute to an HSA. I can no longer contribute. That's big. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Meaning that your existing HSA is okay.
Yep. The reason is Medicare is not a high deductible plan. There's not a high deductible for Medicare. So you're no longer covered under a plan that's eligible. So, if you have two plans and one is not considered high deductible, Medicare is usually this triggering point.
Right.
Then you no longer can contribute, which is the big thing. The other one is you cannot do this if you're claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return.
But aren't we all dependent on someone? Because
not on your tax returns, always. You may be dependent on someone, but not on your tax return.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. So
like a minor, for
yes,
example.
A minor for sure. Or if you're...
Even if you're 20, even if you're in the early 20s and you're still on your parents' health care plan, you can't have your own HSA.
Right, because you're claimed as a dependent. So once the money is in an HSA and the HSA is established, that is your money. There's no... So let's say an employer contributes to it, because I haven't got there yet, but contributions can come in by you. You can make contributions. Your employer can make contributions, or really anybody else, which it's weird, but I guess someone
put some money in my account.
But once the money's in your account, it's yours. There's no waiting period.
No vesting period.
Your company cannot say you can't touch this for 3 years.
Right.
Once it's contributed, it's yours.
And they can't take it out.
They cannot take it out. It's yours. Once that HSA is there, it's not a use it or lose it type of thing. It's yours, and it's there for as long as you leave it in the account. So it goes back to that Medicare. If you have a balance in your HSA and you switch from your company plan to Medicare, you don't lose your HSA.
Right.
It's there. You just are limited to what you can do with it. You can no longer contribute. You can only take withdrawals from it.
Right.
All right. So that's important.
And on that note, with withdrawals, you can... There's a couple different ways you can do that, but the most common way is that you can get a debit card from linked to your HSA. So it's like a checking account. It spends the money in the HSA, and to only use that debit card for health expenses.
Yes. So there's really three ways. Debit card, which is just you use that for the actual transaction. Checks. Not a lot of people use checks anymore, but you can actually get a checkbook for an HSA account and write checks out of it.
Yeah.
The third one is applying for reimbursement. So I pay out of pocket for something, and then I get reimbursed through my HSA for that expense.
And if you use your credit card for rewards, that could be a good way to do double dip.
So the key is, for any of those, all of those, doesn't matter how you do it, keep the document, keep the receipt, keep the proof of the qualified medical expense. Because if you're audited and they want to see your deductions, so I took $5,000 out of HSA, show me you had $5,000 medical expenses.
Yep.
Pro tip,
Josh.
First one. I'm going to have a couple.
Oh, man.
First one. There is no time frame for taking reimbursements from medical expenses, as long as you have documented proof of that medical expense.
So you mean I could have an expense now, pay for it out of pocket, have the money in my HSA, and then reimburse myself in 20 years?
Yes.
As of today's rules.
The caveat is you have to have your HSA established to start that counting point. So let's say I have an HSA right now, and in this year, my HSA is open. I have a $5,000 medical expense.
You break your leg.
I pay that out of pocket. I pay it out of pocket. I got some money in my emergency fund. We've talked about that. I take care of the expense. And I think, you know what? I kind of want this money to grow tax-free.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to wait.
Right.
As long as I keep that medical expense record and I don't ever take a deduction for that, 20 years from now, after letting that money grow, I could qualify and take that out as long as I have that proof.
Pro tip number one.
So that's
Josh.
interesting. Now, keeping that and talking and proving that you didn't ever take it may be a little harder 20 years to make sure that so I don't know if I'd go that long, but you don't have, it's not a calendar year. It's not, oh man, I forgot to reimburse myself last year. Oh, I'm stuck. No, you could still do it. So that's the first pro tip. So that's the HSA, high level, what you need to do to be qualified for one. And again, most medical plans, like employer medical plans, will probably be a high deductible nowadays. The most plans you run into are high deductible. So most people will qualify for an HSA. And then again, as long as you're not on Medicare or any other kind of coverage, if you have, certain unions or, especially like public employment, so like if you work for the government, there may be a separate healthcare plan that you're on that disqualifies you from.
And you might have a separate type of health
there may be a
savings
medical savings account,
Some
but
sort
not
of
an
thing.
HSA.
Right, exactly.
So that's your qualifications. Contributions, like we talked about, anybody can do it. Your employer or you are the main two that usually do it. The employer actually gets a deduction if they put it in.
Yeah?
There's a deduction one way or another, so they can it'd be a business.
So speaking
expense.
of contributions,
yes,
the question is, could I put all of my money into my HSA, or are there limits?
there are limits.
They like to
Yes.
just tie your hands behind your back.
Yep. And I will say one last thing: employers,
Oh,
they are required, if they're a normal plan, so there's some little caveats like asterisks, but a normal employer, if they give to some, they have to give the same amount to all. There's a kind of a clause that they build into the healthcare plan. Well, look out.
whew! Spilled my water.
We're all right.
It's okay.
We're good.
No worries.
There is a clause they build into
This
the
is so
healthcare.
exciting.
I know, it's like watch Austin clean up his water. There's a clause they put into the healthcare plan that pretty much states you can't
Discriminate,
yeah, pretty much
essentially.
highly compensated, get this, and whatever. No, if you put in a little bit, you got to do it equally for all. So that's just one caveat why an employer, when they make contributions, that they're limited to. For you, how much can you put in a year?
Individually?
Individually, in a group. What do
Okay,
you
I'm
got?
going to tell you.
You're going to tell me.
Because I know.
You know.
$3,600 for an individual.
Yes.
So that's if you are on your own plan, you're a solo hombre or lady. So that's your limit there. But
What's the
no,
breast?
no.
Umbriosis?
You're the brother lives in Texas. He should know this. So anyway, that's by yourself. Now if you got a family, so you got a family plan, family health plan.
Yes.
Then you can essentially double that. You get $7,200. Yep.
And they increase the pretty much about $50 per year for the individual and $100 for the family group. So
Inflation.
So next year it would be $36.50 and $73. That's
Ish.
kind of how it works. Yep, pretty
Hasn't
much.
been officially
it's about 50.
announced.
Yeah, it's been 50 pretty much every year. There's a catch up like there is for other
Like
contributions.
Heinz?
Yes, the condiment that you put right on top of your HSA. That's good. A catch up contribution. If you're over 55, you get $1,000.
Yeah.
Here comes my next pro tip.
Pro tip number 2.
Yes. Now, you can have a single HSA
Yep.
for a group plan. So, like if it's my family, I can have one HSA, put $7,200 in that for the family, right? Because I'm on a family plan. Or I could have two, one for me and one for my spouse, and we could still do $7,200 total.
Right.
Just it has to be split. Doesn't matter how you split it. Can't do more together if we're on the same plan or if we're on separate plans.
Right.
That you can't do more than $3,600 each or a total of $72. All right. Now the catch-up contribution is $1,000.
Okay.
That's per person,
Not for your family.
not for the family. So if I have one HSA and there's two of us, HSAs are a lot like other retirement style accounts like IRAs where they're named to one person. Only one owner.
like a Social Security number.
Right. Only one person can own these HSAs. It can't be a joint account. So I can only put $1,000 in this HSA. So I could do $7,200, then an extra $1,000 catch up for $8,200. But if my spouse is also 55, I cannot do that extra $1,000
In the
for
same
the spouse
account.
in that same account because I've already used the catch up for that person who
Right.
owns the account. So a pro tip would be, it's fine while you're younger to have just one HSA because you can't get any additional money in either way. But once you're 55, if you're both 55, open up a second HSA. If you're both still in a high deductible plan from 55 to 65, kind of that 10-year window, you can both do that $1,000 catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you put the $7,200 in the one account, just open it for that extra $1,000 if you can save it. So,
Right.
pro tip, extra way to get $1,000, triple tax advantage savings.
Man, you're going to be HSA pros by the time this
man, it's
episode
crazy.
is over. So yeah, that is the limit. Obviously, we're in any tax advantaged account is going to have some sort of contribution limit because, well, the government needs taxes.
Yes.
They need a lot of that.
Well, in a sense, they don't want to make this too advantage towards the high income earners, right?
yeah.
Because we know healthcare expenses are expensive.
Right.
So a lot of the lower income earners, they really can't utilize this for long-term savings, right? They put money in, get the tax advantage, but they're usually paying it back out to cover medical expenses, which is what it's designed for, which is fine. But, if you could, there was no income limit and no contribution limit, that would just really be, I could put $100,000 and never pay tax on it. And
Right.
the IRS just say, no, we're going to cap this for medical expenses. And I did mention income limits. there is actually no income limits for HSAs.
Yeah.
So for high income earners who are out of the income range for IRAs, for Roth IRAs, can no longer contribute to those type of individual retirement accounts. And HSA is a great thing. Make sure you're maxing that out because it doesn't matter how much you earn. You get the same amount put in as everybody else.
Everyone's on the same limit.
Yep.
So the question then, Josh, is what? So obviously, I can spend this money for qualified medical expenses.
Yes.
But what if I need to take out? Now, we would advise against this. But what if I need, air quotes, to take out this money before or for any other purpose other than a medical expense?
Yeah. So first, medical expenses. Those are what you think of. They can count towards doctor visits and prescription drugs, and
emergency
it even
room.
goes to like dental and chiropractor. I mean, pretty much medical expenses across the board. What was interesting when I was doing this research is for a while, you could not use it for non-prescription drugs over the counter. They stopped it, and I think it was
like
2000.
Your Zyrtec or whatever.
In the mid-2000s, but just last year, end of 2019, with the COVID tax relief bill, they included it back in again.
Gotcha.
And female hygiene products as well.
Oh.
They used to not be able to use it for that. So
There you go.
they're expanding the list, which is good, to say, okay, here's more medical expenses that should be covered. I mean, if you're using this to pay for medical stuff,
Right.
non-prescription drugs, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
come on. And it makes a lot of sense because you need this. I have a headache. I need Tylenol. Man, it'd be nice if I could use my HSA, the money I'm already putting away for medical costs.
Right.
So anyway, it's pretty broad what it covers. Even to some extent, transportation to and from. Like you can use it for quite a few different things.
Like if you needed an Uber to the doctor.
If that's, and again, you got to keep your receipts and be able to show like the needs for it. But for a lot of medical expenses, there's some things, it covers it pretty broad. It's a lot more broad than, for instance, college savings 529 plans. They're a little more narrow.
Yeah.
So that's good. But your question was, what if I need it for something else?
Right.
The IRS says, okay, well, we gave you tax deductions. We gave you tax-free growth. We're giving you tax-free withdrawals. If you're going to just try to really take advantage of us, we're going to have to put limitations on that. And so they have a 20% penalty. It's a 20% penalty now.
Now, that's on the dollars, not the growth.
That's 20% penalty on distributions that are not
distribution
qualified.
dollars.
Not just, so if I put in $5,000, I take $5,000 out like a Roth, that's not penalized or taxed because it was my money to begin with.
Yeah.
Not in this, because you got the deduction on it. They're saying now this money is qualified and now it counts. So a 20% penalty and income tax on that distribution. So let's say I'm in the 20% tax bracket. That's a 40% tax on my distribution when you count the penalty in there as well.
They're really disincentivizing
They
people.
really don't want you to do that.
No.
Now, they understand that, let's say you're a pretty healthy individual and you use this health savings account your whole working career and you don't really use it much. It'll grow pretty big, and you say, well, I may not really be able to use this up. So after the age 65, or at 65 and beyond, you are actually allowed to withdraw it, and they remove that penalty. You still pay income tax. It becomes similar to what an IRA is.
Yeah, deferred. It's tax deferred.
It's tax deferred at this point. So you do pay income tax on the distributions, but no penalty. And so this becomes a pretty cool savings vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
It's another IRA in a standpoint on how that's looked at retirement.
Yeah.
And again, 65 is when Medicare kicks in. That's when you can no longer contribute anymore anyway. So they're kind of saying, hey, there's no more advantage for contributions into this. You can start using it. And even if you don't need it for medical expense, you can take some money out. It'll just be like an IRA.
Nice. So that could be like a secret weapon for retirees.
It is a great
Especially if you've, we're probably just getting to the point where people who are retiring have had them for a long time.
So 2003 was, I think, the year that they signed it into law when George Bush passed this.
So we're only at
CARE Act or
20-ish
whatever.
years.
Yep.
So think of in another 10 years, you'll see people who've had them their entire working career, and those are going to be some pretty sizable accounts, I'm sure.
Yeah, if they
at
were
some point.
smart early on in not utilizing the full amount for their current expenses and were saving.
Yeah. All right, Josh, it's time. It's Thursday. You're getting a dad joke of the week.
I am ready.
And it's more of a dad thought of the week.
Okay.
Remember when we were kids, there was things called mood rings?
Mood rings, yes.
Everyone played with them, and they gave different colors.
Yeah, you
I
put
don't
it
know.
on, and if you're grumpy,
I don't think it really worked.
A
It was
color.
a joke. But yeah. So someone stole my mood ring.
Oh, no.
I don't know how I feel about that.
You haven't decided. I'm waiting for it to tell me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my dad
like
thought of the week.
I like it.
So the next question then is, where would you have or hold an HSA, right?
Yeah.
So depending on
in
your
my pocket.
tax savings envelope.
Yes.
Is it
I just
envelope?
write it on
Is
there.
it envelope or envelope?
Envelope. Well, it depends on if you mailed it or you're receiving it. I don't know.
Okay, so where do you hold your HSA? And there's a couple of options. First of all, depending on your employer and the health plan that your employer offers, they may have one already set up in a preferred provider already. And then that's the one that they may put money into or whatever. It's all kind of set up. That could be employer chosen for you, which is a very great option.
Yep.
A lot of times those can have, every different option can have different limits on what you can and can't do with the investment side of it, which we're going to get to in a little bit. Things look a little bit different depending on where you hold it.
Yes.
The rules are the same as far as taxes and ingoing and outgoing money and all that, but what you can do with the money when it's in there can look a little bit different. But number one is at the custodian or whatever that your employer decides based on your health plan.
Yep.
Number two is if your employer doesn't necessarily have a preferred option, you can really get an HSA account almost anywhere.
Right.
So a lot of banks offer them, a lot of investment custodians offer them, and you can just open one up and put all your social security number and digits and all that, whatever they want to know in there, probably some health plan information as well. And there you go. You'll have it there. That's kind of, that's where to keep it in a nutshell. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, and if your employer doesn't require you to use a certain HSA plan, we would encourage you to shop around and find, there should be one out there that does not cost anything.
Yeah.
Like, these accounts are really to your advantage. So if you could find one with little to no expenses, ongoing costs for maintenance or anything like that, it's to your advantage, because the longer you let this grow and the less it's going to cost you, the better it's going to be.
Nowadays, it is not uncommon to find a zero fee.
Yes.
Those have really just been kind of launched in the last handful of years, as far as, I'm going to specifically say Fidelity, because I have heard of that one a lot, and that was marketed as a new zero fee HSA. I'm not promoting that.
They're a large custodian.
They're a large custodian, but they just recently, a couple years ago, launched their free zero fee HSA. But a lot of other custodians are going to offer the same sort of thing.
So then I got this money, and if I'm doing what we're talking about, where I am not spending it all, I'm using my regular cash to pay for my medical expenses, and it's growing. What do I do with this? I mean, it's just cash sitting there, and we all know interest rates are so low. What should I do with this, Austin?
There's a couple options. So it depends.
That's a good one.
This is Josh's
I should
favorite
say
answer.
that.
Yeah, you should say that. So in moderation, you should do X, Y, Z. No, for real. It depends on what your family's situation is. So if your family is planning on utilizing the triple tax advantaging just for that, but using the health savings account, the money that's going in is going to be money spent, within reason at a certain time on healthcare expenses. You probably want to leave a lot of it in either cash or very conservative.
Right. You want it to be there when you need it.
Exactly. Now, the longer your time frame is from when you plan on anticipating to need this, the more you should invest larger portions. So if you are at a point in your life where you're pretty healthy, your family's healthy, or especially if you're single, and you really don't dip into this much, you can just cash flow your medical expenses with your paychecks, then you can actually use this as a nice investment account, choose how it gets invested, and let it grow tax-free until you need it, which is a pretty cool thing. So I would say that generally it depends on when you need it. If you need it soon, either don't invest it, you can leave it in cash, it's going to be fine, it's still going to accumulate and maybe earn a little bit of interest, or the longer you have from the time from now to the you need it, you can go ahead and start investing it. So with a lot of these accounts, most places offer mutual funds as options of what you can do with this money, and some of them have a minimum cash threshold that you need to hold there. Some don't. ETFs and stocks and individual things are now becoming options in these accounts. If you want to, build portfolios, that's a way to do it. But my general advice is keep it to a risk tolerance that you are comfortable with if you would need it. Like, don't bet the horse on
some gaming stock.
GameStop.
So one example or one idea, tip, if you want to call it that, would be, let's say I have a $5,000 deductible in my plan, right? I may keep $5,000 cash and invest the rest. So I know if there's ever an emergency where I just can't come up with the money, I have my full deductible covered. Right? So once I hit my deductible, then my expenses for my medical costs go way down. Yeah, I may have a copay or something, but in general, it's a lot less. So, I would keep $5,000 cash, and everything above that, I would invest. So that's an example of doing a little, protecting that need for the short term while investing a bigger chunk for the long
And
term.
another way to even take that one step further is healthcare plans also have a maximum out of pocket. So you could actually add another tier onto that. You could have up to your deductible in a cash or cash equivalent. You probably want to, maybe you want to earn a little
Money
yield
market
or
or
whatever. Yeah, something really short term. And then from your deductible amount up to your max out of pocket, you can then have something a little bit more conservative, because you could dip into that theoretically within a year. That way, if you, I don't know, need some crazy surgery maybe.
Yeah.
And then after that point, you could go full growth mode or whatever you want if your risk tolerance allows it. But then, because you're not going to need that within a year anyway, you're not going to need that.
And you can make the adjustment later.
Exactly.
So that's just some ideas. If you have 4 kids and they're always hurting themselves or getting sick, maybe it's keeping an eye on that full out of pocket for a year to say, you know what, that's my normal life. I usually get close to that max. I should be more aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wherever you're at.
So, Josh, I have a pro tip as well.
Oh, you got
Austin's pro tip. Josh had 2. I only have 1.
Yes.
But suppose you want to take a career change. A lot of people do it.
I like my job.
I know, same here.
Okay.
But a lot of people do it.
Yeah,
I've done
somebody
it.
else might. Yeah.
I've done it, and I learned this. It actually was a factor in timing of a change at one point.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew that at a certain point in January, I was going to get an employer contribution into my HSA, and I timed my effective end date of my job after that.
Nice.
And it worked out very well. So if you're thinking about doing that, these little things can really add up, because your employer could easily put $500, $1,000 more, who knows, dollars into your HSA. So look at those little things that could add up as a factor. Just move things maybe a week or something, and it could really help out. So that's a pretty cool thing. That's my pro tip. So, Josh, let's start this off with how do we have different family situations. Let's talk about how we use HSAs and then kind of some closing thoughts.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You already kind of hit the nail on the head. You have 4 kids.
Yeah, I do have 4 kids. And so when I first opened an HSA a handful of years ago, it was just that kind of flow through, get the deduction, but I used it all. Right at the end of the year, I barely had a balance, which was fine, and it worked fine. But I've just recently decided that if I can budget and cash flow as much of that medical cost as possible, and let this grow, then I'll have better long-term results from this. And so I've been trying to do that. This is the first full year where I have been paying our medical costs out of pocket. And so far this year, we're late October, early November,
Getting towards the end.
Yes, we haven't had any huge major medical costs.
Right.
So it's been working out. I do, in mine, I'm able to invest. And so I do keep some cash on hand, not my full deductible amount, but I do have some that if there was a expense or whatever, I could dip into that in cash, and then I could liquidate whatever I need to if I ever really have to. But the goal will be to, over the next handful of years, to let that grow and slowly let my cash amount build up to about that deductible out of pocket, somewhere in that range, and then I'm just going to leave it and put the rest in. But for now, I'm kind of splitting it a third, kind of in different groups. That's what I'm doing. But I've been thankful that this year we haven't had a huge cost.
Right.
But also I've been able to increase a little bit of my savings. I'm not quite maxing it out yet, but that's my goal, to get there, to get the full family in. Sometimes at the end of the year, I just throw some, money from my savings account over just to get the max. But month to month, I'm not quite getting to that max contribution yet. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, we're pretty healthy individuals in general. Now, our family has its own set of special circumstances regarding our sweet little girl, but she fortunately does not cost us a ton of money out of pocket. So we have been able to save, and we're trying to invest and grow for the longer term. We kind of also view our emergency fund as something we could dip into for healthcare expenses if we need it at this point.
Yep.
And that's totally separate. But I would go there first instead of my HSA, actually, because I'm trying to accumulate and grow at this point.
Yep.
So that's kind of our goal right now, is when we have healthcare expenses, we just cash flow it at this point if we can, hopefully without dipping into savings. But if we have to, that's what they're there for. Yep. And our HSA is, we're growing it as we can. And it's kind of fun for me as an investment guy to get to
pick a couple
things here and there and have a little bit of fun with it. But also, keep in mind that it's my family's important money. So being responsible with it. Yeah. So that's kind of how we do it. But everyone's situation is different. You just have to choose what's best for you, whether that's your risk tolerance or how you fund things as they go. Everyone's financial situation is different, but it's a really, really powerful tool. Yeah. And I'm thinking it's going to be a hugely powerful tool in another 10 or 20 years, as these people have had 20 or 30 or 40 years to accumulate these accounts.
Yep. And I think, it's probably seasonal too. Like, I know a couple of my kids are going to probably need braces in a couple of years. And so there may be years where there's just going to be more costs, and I just know it. And so it may be those times where I use some of the cash in there.
Yep.
It just depends where you're at. Again, when you're in childbearing years, having a baby
That adds up quick.
That is not cheap.
No, it's not.
And so those are, again, part of the reason why the last handful of years is there were costs of that. You're hitting your deductible on that
real quick,
right away.
Yeah.
So to be able to cash flow or pay for that is huge. So get that tax deduction by putting the money in, but it's just going right back out. So you just where you're at with your life, that's fine.
So 2 reminders.
Yes,
because it's only November.
It is.
So number 1. It's still not too late. It's only November. It's still not too late to enter our second half doc draft competition. You probably will beat Josh. Probably not
Austin.
Me.
He's up near the top there.
Yeah, you can start with a fresh $100,000 and really see if you can
start with a fresh $100,000.
No, actually, I made the rules when we made this, so you can't close and start over.
Yes.
So anyway, but yeah, you can join that. We would love to have you. It's kind of fun to just rub it into each other when we're doing well or not. Number 2, as always, check out our free gift to you. It's a brief list of 8 principles of timeless investing. Overarching investment theme is meant to keep you on track to meet your long-term goals. We don't specifically talk about HSAs, but it's an incredibly powerful tool that can be a part, not of everyone's, but of most people's financial situation. So check it out. It's free on our website. Josh, how can people help us grow this podcast?
Yep. Make sure you subscribe. That way, every Thursday, you get our newest episode sent directly to whatever you use to listen to podcasts. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's always great. Helps more people find us. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or have a topic you'd love us to talk about, shoot us an email at hello@theinvesteddads.com. We'd love to hear from you and love to talk about those ideas that you're concerned or wondering about. And then lastly, if you know somebody was asking about HSAs or they were confused with what that acronym meant, and you need us to straighten them out,
quite possible.
Just share it with this episode with them.
All right. Well, until next Thursday, have a great week.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Invested Dads podcast. This episode has ended, but your journey towards a better financial future doesn't have to. Head over to theinvesteddads.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and we had a positive impact on your life, leave us a review, click subscribe, and don't miss the next episode. Josh Robb and Austin Wilson work for Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. All opinions expressed by Josh, Austin, or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Hicks & Zerker Capital Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. There is no guarantee that the statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. Securities investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment plan or strategy will be successful.